to give it that extra sort of pow before you have a flock of people come in.
Yeah, because it's not uncommon for us to say to customers, look, you take the kids and the dogs,
absolutely, yes,
go out for the day.
If you've got a log burner, get the fire on, and maybe get a pot of coffee on the go, and just make all those senses have something to sort of, be joyful about when they walk in.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Utterly Indispensable podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ellie from the Hub Property Staging, and she talks to us all about the importance and the difference that staging properties can make. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and there's loads of insight here.
So, Ellie, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast. Great for you to come along. And your business is the Property Staging Hub?
The Hub Property Staging.
Ah, my apologies. The Hub
Thanks for
Property Staging.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So what I'd like to do today, if possible, is there are a couple of different bits I'd love to chat to you about. I'd love to understand about property staging and how that obviously particularly benefits my clients, all those estate agents out there. I'd also like to look at the business and some of the interesting hurdles that you have to get over with dealing with some estate agents. But to start with, I'd love to get a bit about you and understand about your background. So how did you get into property staging?
So my background is, for the last 20 years, I've been styling and staging. I have a background in merchandising and staging spaces and working in commercial and retail spaces. And then through that, I've then started an interior design business, sort of a bit of a side hustle, and worked with lots of residential clients. And then that grew, and then I was doing set design. This is all over like the course of, 15, 20 years.
Okay.
And then the residential side, the design side has really been since COVID, really, I think.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to do so much of the set design and staging elsewhere and commercially. And so I sort of honed in on residential clients. People were really interested in changing up their homes.
So when you say commercial, is that things like shops and that sort of thing?
Shops, but also like the music industry and fashion and homewares, and a bit of everything, a little bit of everything. And
that sounds like a really cool, exciting world.
It was, but yes, it was.
Okay.
But you would, maybe have 4 or 5 meetings about an event that took 2 or 3 days, and then you might not see that client for years or months. And the retail sector, that was good, but it doesn't really. You're restricted by the overarching message of the business. You can't be as creative as you would like to be.
Okay.
They have an objective, and you have to sort of feed into that.
Yeah.
So doing it, and then doing interior design for private clients, that was really fun, but again, quite long-winded. So you might work with a client for a year before you actually get to the end result. There's lots of tweaking. It's always about, as it should be, about what they want and what they're going to live with. So although you are bringing creative ideas to the table, you're working around their tastes and what they would like.
Is that sometimes frustrating? Whenever I watch the telly programmes, there seems to be this mismatch of what the designer would like to do and what the customer will allow them to do.
Massively frustrating. Okay. We just have to wear a smile and say, of course your collection of China dogs would work beautifully in this scheme, or that really big, ugly leather sofa. But that is the skill, isn't it? Is trying to show someone something else, an alternative way of doing it, but also incorporating what they love and cannot let go of.
Yeah, I suppose it would be 10 times easier if you just do your thing every time.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't be their home. It'd be my interpretation.
Yeah.
Of, that's not even interpretation. This is what I think you should have, and you will love it. And they're paying, for their home. Anyway, so that was, and then within that, I was meeting developers. I designed and staged some service accommodations, some holiday lets, Airbnbs, and I did a show home. And I was like, actually, you have much more control on the layout, the furniture, the colours, everything. And also the pace is much faster. It can be very fast.
Okay.
Which is frustrating or, can be a challenge, but it's also quite exhilarating. So I was like, this is...
So what makes the pace so quicker?
Because often they'll have an idea of what they want to do months before the property's finished, but they won't tell you.
Okay.
They'll go, oh, we need to organise that. I mean, I am talking smaller developers, so maybe it's not something that's as planned in. as a larger developer. But
Yeah.
Or certainly with the holiday lets, with the refurbs, it was a case of, right, actually, we haven't got anything booked in for the next few months. It's really quiet. Now's the time just to jump in, and then we'll relaunch.
Yeah.
Once you're up and running and you've got a steady trickle of bookings, it's difficult to sort of just sort of blank that out in your calendar. Yeah. Whereas if you find that it's getting slower and slower, and then we actually have nothing, right, now's the time, jump, do it.
Yep.
Or people who, an investor who's bought on a property, they want that property earning for them in the holiday let market as quickly as possible. They're paying a mortgage on that property.
Yeah.
So that's like, I bought it, I need it done, and I've just realised I can't do it by myself. It actually takes quite a lot of effort.
Those vacancy periods are expensive, aren't they?
They're expensive, yes. And I think people think they can do it themselves, and they realise that they have to shop here, there and everywhere, or they have to wait in for all those deliveries, and they have to build everything, and then the thing that they ordered isn't the right size, so it's people cotton on to the fact that it's going to be a much smoother operation if I get a professional in. Then you get the call, oh, by the way, I need it done next week.
Okay.
So that's to say, that can be challenging, but it's that pace that's also quite exciting, and it means you're sort of seeing new people all the time.
Yeah.
Which I was getting a lot of repeat custom with the interior design, getting a lot of people coming back to me, which is lovely. That says something about the service that they were getting, that they enjoyed it. But it's just nice to meet new people and work in different types of property all over the place.
Yeah.
So yes, I really enjoyed that. I was like, this is exciting, and it's fast paced, and I have more control on the end result. And also, there doesn't seem to be anyone else doing this down here. I don't see a lot of it going on, but I know it needs doing.
Yep.
So I thought, well, this is it. Maybe we should focus that into its own thing. I still do design. I still do like some set design and some staging for marketing campaigns. But this is a business in itself. This is my main baby now.
So when did you set the business up?
So just last year, 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how's it gone so far?
It's exciting. I'm building a network.
Yep.
I've never had so many leads and so many like quotes for. It's clearly people are up for it, and they are more interested than I believe they would be. You sort of think, oh, is anybody going to buy it? Is anybody going to want it? And yes, people are interested. I think there's still a lot of education to be done. So I find a lot of my time is spent on talking to people about exactly what they get for their money, what the process involves.
Okay.
But I have been very busy, but I didn't think I would be busy with estate agents. And that's what I thought I'd be working more with developers. And that's like my ideal client are developers, investors.
Yeah.
I do service accommodations and vacant stages, so kitting out empty homes. But what I wasn't anticipating is working with estate agents, the amount I do. And that's been brilliant. And it's a constant.
Okay.
And once you've got that relationship with that estate agent or estate agents, that work keeps coming. You've got that feed. You're not having to chase it.
Yeah.
You've made that relationship. They've seen the benefit, and it's great. I get something, they get something. Whereas with the developers, you might wait 2 years between builds, so you're always having to sort of fill the gaps with new developers. Whereas the estate agents, it's they might be smaller jobs, but it's regular.
Right. So I would imagine that most estate agents would get the benefit of staging.
You would imagine that, wouldn't
you smile wryly there.
Yes.
Okay. So is that part of the whole point of getting the business to work, is to get people to actually understand the benefits of staging?
I think so. I think it is because, I think in the US and Australia, these are industries, it's huge industry, and it's a given. If you're going to get your home photographed, it's empty, you're going to get it staged, you're going to rent furniture. And then that must lead into estate agents seeing the value of it. And even if it's an occupied home, how can we best present it? Because that's your competition, is a staged, empty, immaculate property.
Yeah.
In this country, it's still emerging. It's there. And I think, it's quite big in London, I think, but it's definitely down this end of the country. People do sort of go, what? What is this? And so once they understand the value, there's no turning back. But it's getting people to understand the value and to see that it is not only is it a nice thing to have, it's necessary.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think many estate agents would argue with you the fact that how well a property is presented is absolutely key to the marketing of it. It's so much easier.
Absolutely. But I think maybe that is it, that they walk in and it's either presented well, brilliant, phew, or it's not presented very well, this is going to be challenging to sell. And I'm providing that, well, actually, we can change this. we can tweak it and we can improve it, and I can help you do that. Rather than just a few suggestions from an agent who's then got to go and see other clients or doesn't necessarily want to have that conversation with the vendor, I'm able to give a more thorough, in-depth appraisal of the property and suggestions and recommendations and quotes and give them solutions. And maybe, to say, I can maybe save that conversation, that awkward conversation. I can be the third person. And from an agent's point of view, I'm a service. I'm an extra level of service that their competitors maybe don't have.
Okay.
So yes, it's educating the vendors as much as the agents, I suppose, because as you say, the agents understand what good, a well-presented property, how well that will sell, but maybe a vendor, particularly one who's been living in that property for decades, they just see it as their home, as well they should, but they don't necessarily see the pitfalls from the big pile of trainers in the corridor. They don't really understand how that's going to make it challenging.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because from the estate agent's point of view, they want to create a frictionless sale where the vendor does want to commit to them as their agent. And sometimes making it harder work by saying, well, we need to do more to make it more saleable, to get you a better price. When the next agent walks in and says, oh, don't worry about it.
Yeah, we'll stick it on as is, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I've got people in the wings that want to buy this.
Yes.
Yeah, classic.
All those classic lines that come out. That much of it. But the reality is, we all know, I think we all know in our heart of hearts that properties sell better if they're presented. I mean, you mentioned some figures previously. What were the figures?
Well, a home that's presented well, and that doesn't necessarily mean staged versus empty, just presented well with furniture laid out properly and decor that's fairly inoffensive, is likely to sell 3 times faster than an empty property or a property that's presented poorly.
Yeah.
It will sell for an average of 8% more, so anywhere between 5, 12 and up, but an average of 8%.
Yeah. I mean, those percentages are huge, aren't they?
It is.
If the average house price is around £360,000, £370,000 in the UK, then that's like £29,000 difference in value.
And if you're talking about staging it, it's an empty property and you want to stage it, then you might be looking at a cost from 1% to 5%, depending on the spec of the property and square footage.
Yeah.
If it's just a consultation and let's just work with what we've got and make that, you're talking a couple of £100.
Right.
But the difference that could make to how saleable that property is, how quickly it sells, how many people engage with it online and then step over the threshold.
Yeah.
Every agent knows the more people that will step over that threshold and want that property and have that, I want this, then you're laughing, aren't you? You are far more likely to get offers over asking rather than just waiting for the one person who actually, I can see through the pile of trainers, and I can see through that dark purple wall. It's you're appealing to a wider market. If you appeal to a wider market, you are going to have far more success.
So how do you educate estate agents to understand that? I mean, I think we mentioned previously, my pet hate was the number of times I see wheelie bins outside the picture of a house. And how do you get them to take that care?
From my experience, I'm looking for agents who are already doing that.
Okay.
So that's an easier win for me. If they are,
So you believe there's a bunch of agents that are just not transferable?
I absolutely do.
Okay.
Because I think they're all about the bottom line. I offer the lowest percentage, the lowest fee. That's how I get my business. Yeah. And I'll sell it as it is, no worries.
Yeah.
And one day I believe I will educate them too. but I think it's the people who are already they're thinking about their marketing, they're thinking maybe they're doing videography and they're really trying to make atmosphere for their properties, or they're doing pre-launches and they're really creating excitement about properties. Whatever the price, they are really capitalizing on that property. But it's also the ones who are middle ground. Then I can convince them, and I can try and convince them to take the plunge and have a go. And I think as soon as they do, and they're not having those conversations that are sometimes awkward with their vendors, but the vendor is then presenting them a better property to photograph, the photography goes more smoothly. They haven't got to go back and have reshoots.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because professional photography now is quite commonplace.
Yes. Yes. And if you
that's not new.
No.
But having a professional photographer take pictures of a house.
Well, if you're taking that expense and you're saying, well, exactly. So maybe if they're doing that, but photography still, you can see it's a professional photographer, but there's still, you know, a pile of awfulness in the corner, or there's like loads of dressing gowns on the back of the door of the bedroom. There's clues there, isn't there, that they care enough to get a professional in to take the photographs, and yet the product they're getting still isn't quite what they were hoping for.
Yeah.
And so I guess those are the agents that you can say, look, you know, there's one extra layer of service that you can offer that will make you look, you know, you care more, you're providing something that your competitors aren't, but actually it's going to give you a better product. This thing that you're investing in, you're paying for this photographer, make that work really, really hard for you and get a better quality product at the end of it.
Yeah, because it's difficult, isn't it? Because you need to get that message through to the seller, but almost through the estate agent.
Yes, the seller,
so it gets diluted, that message, when you're trying to get it sent through to them.
From some agents.
Okay.
Well, I think there are agents who utterly understand the value of it.
Yeah.
And it's the first thing, you know, so if you come with us, the first thing we'll do is we'll get Ellie to come and have a chat with you. And it's, you know, it's a badge, not a badge of honor is the wrong phrase, but it's, I have this service and I want you to benefit from it. They don't have it, I have it, and you will love it.
Tell me about the consultation service, because to be honest with you, Ellie, today's the first time I've learned about that as well. And that sounds really interesting.
I walk in, I meet these vendors, very relaxed. It's a service that lasts 1 to 2 hours. We talk through the home, top to bottom, each room. I come up with a list of recommendations for the home, of things that they might want to tweak, change, that would better present their property. That might be furniture layout. It might be making sure all your bulbs are working and you switch the lights on. It might be clutters, often about decluttering and depersonalization. Making sure that the furniture is laid out correctly so that the space flows better. So you're not walking into a sofa, walking into a sofa when you walk into a lounge. So from a photographer's point of view, that's going to make their job easier. But when you're viewing in person as well, you're going to move through the space. It's going to feel more open, more airy. As we were saying earlier, you know, so how many people look to buy a home because they feel like they've outgrown their home. They have so much stuff, the house isn't big enough for them anymore. Whereas if you're presenting your home, you don't want people to think, well, there's clearly not enough storage in that home either, because look, they've got stuff everywhere. You have to show that the life they want, they can have in your home, be that an uncluttered life, or, you know, a life by the sea, whatever. But part of it will be an uncluttered, livable space that's enjoyable to be in, not, you know.
I mean, we know there are a couple of things that estate agents should all know, and that is that the first couple of weeks of marketing are the best opportunity. Once you've gone beyond that, it all becomes a lot harder work.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of times agents are guilty of trying to do these things afterwards, whereas the reality is the horse has bolted, you've missed the opportunity.
It's not worked, we're not getting the engagement we thought we would. What can we tweak? Well, as you say, maybe the horse has bolted. It's all about first impressions, isn't it?
Yeah.
And making sure that I mean, seconds. I think it's like 8 seconds or 10 seconds, isn't it, when somebody can make a decision on the photos that they see?
Yeah, I mean, I would normally say, certainly when they walk in through the door, I'd say you've got about 30 seconds.
Yes.
They know.
It's just looking.
You're not going to change their mind.
No.
You can be the salesman from heaven.
Yes.
You're not going to change their mind.
Before they've even stepped through the door, they've already sort of come up with an assumption. They've pulled up in the car, and as you said, there's bins out everywhere. But I also think when I'm a bit of a serial stalker of property, and I'm always on Rightmove, and I'm always looking, even though my husband's told me we can't move for several years.
You're one of those people who puts the figures up on Boxing Day.
Yes, yeah. I'm always looking, and then I will look at property, and if I like the images, I'm already nudging him, going, look at that. I haven't even read the blurb. I haven't read the information.
I agree with that, yeah.
And I think most people are like that. And I also think, depending on the agent, that blurb can be a bit inconsequential anyway.
Do you know, I used to crack jokes to myself in descriptions.
Yes.
So by the third or fourth bedroom, I was just putting one-liner jokes in.
Just to see if anybody read.
Nobody noticed.
No, they don't.
Not even the seller who checked the details noticed.
No.
Nobody got that far.
They're so generic, and people will look at the photos. That's what's going to get them to say, oh, we should look, this is the one, we should go and look at this.
Yeah.
And that's your first impression.
Yeah. So tell me, Ellie, about what are some of the things that you can do to make a big difference to a home? What are the areas that do you have a sort of set checklist that you work your way through?
Well, I look at everything.
Okay.
As I just listed, I look at the space, the layout, the colour, are there bushes overgrowing the outside that are going to limit light coming through the
curb
window?
appeal is such an important
yes,
one,
front
isn't it?
door. Does that mean we've got like a nice tidy like buxus plant there and everything? And I will give them a list starting from outside and working around the rooms. And then you get a feel when you're with the client as to how much they really have the time to do or the budget to do. And that's why it's a prioritized list. And then they can pick and choose what they want to focus on.
Yeah.
I mean, I have done these consultations over photos and I've done them in a property with the vendor not there. It's so much better if you're there with the vendor because then you can really get a feel for what's important to them and again, how much time they have. And you can really sort of communicate with them how important it is. And I think just being open and honest with people and saying, that sofa is stopping me from walking in the room, or that bush is so big outside that it's actually blocking light out and it's making your room appear darker than it is. And people won't like that. Oh, people won't. No, they won't. And they'll think that your room is dark when actually it's just that bush outside.
Right.
Or I know you love this purple on this wall and this teal in this room. But actually, although it's just paint and it can be fixed easily and I know it can be fixed easily, the majority of people will not think that way. You're actually going to prevent people coming to view your property. They'll look at the photos and they'll just discard it. So normally colour is the first thing, and layout and curb appeal. And as I say, like lighting. I do, it's a pretty thorough list.
Yeah.
I do give them quite a lot to work with.
So what does the customer end up with?
Well, as I say, a document and support, should they need it, of what to tackle, why, and in what order.
Okay.
And then if there are minor works involved with that, then I can supply quotes. Workmen, I have tradespeople that I can put them in contact with to get things
Is that
done.
is that when they decide I don't want to do any of this, I'm going to get Ellie to do it all for me?
Yes. Okay, well, we can do that. Because I will, it depends, or we'll discuss in the consultation quite how much there is to do, and you'll have an idea of what I need to give to them afterwards. If they're going to need quotes for things, or whether it is just a case, as is often the case, of decluttering and changing the colour palette and rearranging the furniture.
Yeah.
It's normally quite straightforward. And most people who are looking to sell aren't interested in knocking down walls and rejigging everything or changing the kitchen, understandably so. So although I might be thinking, if you just did that, it could be worth so much more, and it would, I'll see them, I'll fill them out for that. But more often, it's people just want what are easy, manageable tasks that I will actually have a big impact, but I can do in a few weeks or a few weekends, because everybody's time poor, aren't they?
Yes.
And also, people are reluctant to spend a lot of money. So if they can do it themselves, if they're manageable tasks, they will. Suddenly, the motivator of a few extra £1,000 on the sale price, people are suddenly quite engaged in putting some paint on the wall.
Yeah, it's interesting, that return on investment.
Yes, absolutely.
It must be huge, really.
It can be, yes.
And like I say, they're saving a few £100 here or there at the cost, the detriment of thousands of pounds on the value of their property.
Yeah, so I recently did a consultation for a couple in Silverton, actually, who had a bungalow that they had. Their father had gone into a home, mother had died. They'd come over from Australia to deal with this bungalow. Now, this couple, the mum and dad, had been living there for 30 odd years, and it was full.
So I would guess, as an estate agent, the classic line the estate agent would use, well, it needs work doing.
Yes.
So it's going to be that sort of person. They're going to rip the kitchen out anyway.
Yeah.
What's the point of doing all that? That'd be the classic line.
Yes.
Is that right?
Probably, yes. I imagine it is. And they could have sold it. They could have put it on the market as it was, and it would have sold. One round the corner had sold it in a similar state.
Yep.
And to exactly that kind of person, a buyer who's interested in ripping it out, starting again, putting a mark on it. But it had a great school up the road, a park out the back.
Yeah.
It had potential to go up into the loft, but it was lovely as it was. Had a really sunny garden. It was fairly modern, so quite tidy and easy. So it could have appealed to a young family or people starting out on the property ladder, a couple downsizing who didn't necessarily want to have a lot of work. They just wanted a nice home to live in and not have the upheaval of a project. So it was not only beneficial to the end price. Well, it was beneficial to the end price and the speed of the sale, because by doing a little bit of work, you then appealed to X, Y, and Z instead of just X.
Yeah, because previously you just apply it to people who wanted to do work and do it up themselves. and suddenly you've opened it up to about
Yes.
3 other chunks
Yes.
of market.
And also, I always think that people who are up for a project, they're more interested in the bargain. The numbers have got to add up as well. I mean, everybody wants to pay as little as they can, right?
Yep.
But if you know you've got to spend 50 to 100,000 pounds on a property to get it where you want, then you're going to drive that price down as low as you can. So I think, again, presenting it well, you're appealing to a wider audience. More people are going to fall in love with your property. That's going to create more demand. It's going to be easier to achieve your market price, maybe above, because you're creating that sort of, oh, this could suit us. This could be good for us, rather than, well, that's no good for me. I don't want that work.
So is your education piece then to almost to bypass the estate agent and educate their customers first, or do you have to do it through the estate agent?
Well, I think my experience is working through estate agents, because I think if the estate agent is bought into it and they see the value, then they are going to communicate that to the vendor.
Yeah.
And if the vendor says, yes, I want the service, then you've already won, you're already halfway there. If the agent sees it as valuable, and then they can communicate that. That's how I work. I go through the agent. So I do work with individuals who say, well, we haven't even found an agent yet.
Yeah.
But what would you suggest we do to get it ready?
Yeah.
But more often, I think people there's such a lot of education to do about it, because I think that most people just go, well, it's ready. We love it. It's ready. So I do think people are listing their properties and missing opportunities left, right, and centre.
I mean, I've always been one to copy the bigger companies. And you think about somebody like Barrett's wouldn't sell a house without a show home.
No.
And that's all about it. And it's funny because I've worked for some of those big builders that people, when they walk around the show home, are then expecting it in their empty house that they actually buy, which they don't unfortunately get. But it's interesting that more people don't take advantage.
They don't. And how many people, we all know what a show home looks like.
Yeah.
We all, whether we're looking at a period property or a new build, we know what a new build looks like.
Yeah.
We've all seen those show homes.
Yeah.
And it seems to me it's an obvious one. If the big boys are doing it without fail, then why wouldn't you apply that? Even if it's your home that you live in, why wouldn't you present it best you can?
Yeah.
And also, for me, whenever I've sold my own properties, I'm already thinking about what I can get rid of and how I can make moving easier.
Well, I would say a bit like you say about there are some estate agents who get it. We have some customers who just don't get it.
They don't get it, no. And
it's because there's that almost like 2 ways of educating.
Yeah.
You need to educate estate agents to understand
Yes.
it, which I think lots of them will get.
yeah,
But then how do you get some? Because it's always the same. It's always the people that should be concerned about it who aren't. The people that worry about it, typically their house is spotless and beautiful. And they'll ring you up and say, is it looking all right? Is it okay? And it's lovely.
Yeah.
But it's always the people where it's not lovely.
That's the harder sell, isn't it? Because they don't see the problems that are there. But I think at the end of the day, money is king. And if you can convince someone or show them examples of, well, look, we did this, this, and this. We just tidied that away. We just painted that out.
It's interesting that we go for money every time, because for most people, it's not always just about money, is it? As you say, it sells 3 times faster if the property is staged. Well, most people just don't like that. It's the not knowing. If you're planning to move and you want to get on with moving, you have plans and you don't know whether somebody's going to buy it, how long it's going to take. It's the not knowing that kills.
Yes. And then, as you were saying, after you've had that first few weeks or months and it's not feeling, you've lost your first impression opportunity, then you've got the awkward conversation of, well, maybe we need to look at the price, maybe we need to reduce the price. And again, it's all avoidable. Because by this point, as a vendor, you've housed on the market, you convince yourself, well, that's the money I'm going to get for it, so I'll start looking, and that's what I've got to play with.
In your
and
head.
you spent it.
Yeah.
You maybe even have convinced yourself, well, we'll have to spend a little bit more.
Yep.
And then the next thing is you find out you're 30 grand down.
Yeah.
So again, avoid it. Get in there and get it looking right first time.
Yeah. Again, that's a really important part. I often say you're always one difficult conversation away from moving forward. I think too often we're guilty of avoiding those difficult conversations.
I would much rather have a conversation with a client as an estate agent saying, you might want to just look at how you're presenting this property, then you might want to take some money off.
Yeah. Like you say, if the estate agent did it with every customer, it would make no difference, would it?
No.
as part of the service, what
Yeah.
we do is we make sure your property is presented in
Yes.
the best way, and we'll have an
But they
expert
don't.
come round. Yeah.
They don't, which is why you see photographs with, piles of clothes on the beds unmade, bins. I saw one. They'd shot it so low, and it was the corner of a dining table, and they must have had little children running around because the corner of the dining table had like foam sellotape to the corner of and that was like in the shot right up front.
Yeah.
Well, I know if I buy that, my children will be safe. Oh no, they won't, because the table's going. But yes, it astounds me.
Yeah, it is
especially
interesting.
in this world of Instagram and Pinterest, like what we're around, and all the property programs you see. We all know what good looks like.
Yes, we
and
do.
Yet we're not very good at applying it to our own home, and I guess that's because you have an emotional attachment to it. It's your home, it's your cocoon, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I do think my attitude is once you've decided to sell that property, that is now, it's not your home anymore. Someone else's home. So present it as someone else's home, and think about your next property.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. I don't know how well you'll get people to buy into it, and I do have some empathy for the estate agent, because you're battling to win the instruction, as you say, with somebody with lower fees, and you're trying to win it, and you're trying to create an environment where it is. Tell them there's something else, another bunch of hoops they're going to have to jump through to get it there, whereas somebody else might just turn up and say, that's.
Yeah.
It's that difficulty.
Yeah.
And there is a skill set there. But as you say, there's probably no point in taking it on at a high price that it won't sell and missing that, because all you're going to do is create a lot of hard work for yourself. I think make it easier for you and the customer.
And that's, from an estate agent's point of view, that's how I can help them. So their stock is improved and things will sell faster and for a better price, but they are providing this service. They're looking after their customer.
Yeah.
But ultimately their stock is improved and it will make their job easier. This is for if somebody listens to my list of recommendations, but it should result in the estate agent having an easier time of it, having a product that sells easier.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and that's always my recommendation as well, is don't just do this for photos, keep it this way. Try and keep it half hour ready. So when someone comes to view this property, it doesn't look a million miles from the photography.
It does set up. I think now people do viewing blocks, don't they?
Yes.
That from an estate agent's efficiency point of view, and to get that sense of urgency with the customer. You see it, it's probably less so with the market softening, but it was a lot of, we'll do an open period or a block viewing at a certain time and there's people in and out. Your service fits around that completely and utterly, doesn't it?
It does. And also another layer that I have is that I can do a pre-photography or like an open event like that. I can do a stage or a styling before that.
Right.
So just to make sure that it's tweaked and just looking its best, as I say, before photography. But again, so say it's an occupied property, doesn't really need much, but just a little bit of zhuzhing just to give it that extra sort of pow before you have a flock of people come in.
Yeah, because it's not uncommon for us to say to customers, look, you take the kids and the dogs,
absolutely, yes,
go out for the day.
If you've got a log burner, get the fire on, and maybe get a pot of coffee on the go, and just make all those senses have something to sort of, be joyful about when they walk in.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, I remember we had a client and they insisted on doing the viewings. It was their mother's house. It wasn't even her house. And I think they did 35 viewings without us having any interest at all on the property.
That says quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, we finally convinced her. It wasn't actually me that did the viewings. It was one of my colleagues did the viewings. But we had 3 viewings and we had 2 offers from the 3 viewings. And I don't think sellers quite appreciate how they can have such a bad effect.
Yeah.
And that's them.
Yeah.
So never mind
their stuff and their kids and their dog.
Yeah.
And their washing on the side. Yeah.
So I do think that modern way of selling, I say it's modern, it's probably been around for years, but it's been more commonplace now that if you can do that open view. But again, you need clients who are going to be brave with their price, don't you? Because too often, if you push it to the limit and trying to get sellers to understand that asking the price isn't the thing that determines the outcome of the price. Actually, if you're a bit lower and get more interest, chances are you'll end up with a better price.
I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? To be able to say, well, I by all means, I have it come for a viewing, but I need to, I have offers on the table.
Yeah.
I've got people who've already viewed it and they're very excited about it. Or all the better if you can if they're walking out as you're walking in and they're making all the right noises.
No.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Not just waiting for the one qualified buyer who's got, may or may not be cash or may not have sold their property. You want a flock to choose from.
Yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it? It's really hard work selling a rubbish product.
Mm.
You just make your job. It's hard work marketing a rubbish. You have to go back and improve the product.
Yes.
I talk with estate agents about improving their service because it's much easier to sell.
Mm.
And the vendor wouldn't have to spend as much time, effort and money in marketing or changing agents or doing the different bits and pieces if actually they just spent a couple of weekends improving the product they were looking to sell. It would psych a load of issues for everybody. I guess the problem is, how do you convince them of that? And you come over brilliantly, but you're trying to get a third party, as in the estate agent, to try and convince them of that on your behalf.
They have to see the value, don't they? They have to see, actually, my life is made easier with this. Like, my vendor is happier because I'm selling it faster, hopefully for more. But my job's actually easier now because this is an easier product to sell, as you say. It's, I've upped the ante. I've upped this product. As we were saying, if you were selling a car, if you were selling anything of your own, present it well.
Yeah.
And
as an agent, you're almost a reflection of what you sell.
Yes, exactly. So when I say about your stock looking better,
it reflects well on your business.
It does. And then if people are looking for agents, they're shopping around who we're going to go with.
Yes.
Well, this is all photographed well, and they all look quite nice. And that house looks a bit like ours, but it looks nice, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It reflects on you and your quality.
Well, there are a couple of stories on that one. I always used to say to the agents, when we used to have windows were so important, obviously with Rightmove, it's not so important, but I used to stop them putting the ugly houses in the window because it betrayed on the image of your business.
They need selling, but doesn't mean that you want to shout about those ones.
No. And the other thing I would say, I used to say this to people who would try and sell me marketing stuff, the latest marketing gimmick or sales gimmick, is actually a really good house is going to get me far more leads than anything that you're going to try and sell me. If I've got a cracking house at the right price.
And it sells fairly quickly.
Well, the key is it'll attract other good sellers in.
Yes.
Again, one of the battles I remember in London was trying to stop the guys selling it to the first cash buyer that walked through the door. And we've had that problem in the Southwest before, haven't we? When the people were coming down and we were just selling it to the guy down from London with cash. Whereas actually, as the agent, you're far better off selling it to Mr. and Mrs. Smith up the road who have a house to sell.
And they have friends.
Yeah. And they're local and the connection. So I think that's probably a really important missed piece, that the quality of the product reflects on the agency.
Yes.
And if they want to look fantastic and want to look really good, then having
feed into the vanity a little bit.
Yeah, but I do genuinely believe it's more than vanity.
It does have that result. People will look at the quality of your stock and it gives an impression of you and the kind of service that you provide, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But I do think also you are actually providing a service. You are providing something. You're looking after your clients in a way that maybe other agents don't.
Yeah.
And considering their needs and helping them maximize.
Yeah.
So you're not saying, I can sell it for you fastest or the cheapest. I'll charge the least. But actually, I'm going to really look after you and help this process go really smoothly. And it benefits everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. So tell me, Ellie, for all those customers and agents who want to do it themselves, what would be your top tips? Because obviously, always in this thing, there's plenty of marketplace out there for everything. What are the top tips of looking at what's the most important thing?
I think the most important thing is stuff.
Okay.
I do. I think colour is important, light is important, but I think stuff.
Yeah.
Get rid of the stuff. Because if it will stop people seeing the space, how much space is available. It will be massively distracting. And I think if you can it's a really challenging conversation to say, you need to declutter. Because a lot of people will go, well, I've taken a couple of bits off the shelf. It probably would need to be a bit more brutal than that.
I mean, we have been helped out by the telly, haven't we?
Yes.
There are programs relentlessly on telling everybody that.
And so that's extra ammunition, isn't it? As an
Yeah.
agent, you can say, well, there's a reason that these programs are successful because everybody's doing the same, making the same mistakes. And so if you present something that is void of that, then people will think, that's the kind of life I can have if I have that home.
Yeah.
But yes, I think the best thing is you need to step out, don't see it as your home anymore, and think about how it's perceived by others and whether it's going to look big enough for them, spacious enough for them. Edit that bit out.
Cool. Okay. So, Ellie, that's been really useful. Some great insight. I hope that people will take some of that on board. Like you say, it's an interesting battle you've got. You're going on a mission, really, aren't you?
I am on a mission, one house at a time.
Educate, well, one estate agent at a time.
No, you're right. One estate agent at a time, and then they can educate all their clients and say, would you like to meet Ellie? And then I will do the rest. Let me through the door.
Okay.
And I will educate them. And I think I'd like to think that the people I've worked with will never sell a home the old way again.
Right.
And that they will, apply these learns to everything that they sell.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, let's hope so. Watch this space. I'm sure they will, Ellie. That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ellie. I thought she gave us some really great insight into the importance of staging properties. And I thought the service that she offered was really interesting and a great benefit to estate agents in order to improve the service they provide their customers. But the thing that probably caught my attention the most was the point about how important the stock that you sell represents the sort of estate agent that you are. And therefore, better the quality that you can make the stock you sell, the better that reflects on yourselves. It was a really interesting aspect. Now, Ellie is based in the southwest of England. However, there are staging specialists all over the country. So it's probably worthwhile contacting somebody close to you to see what services they can provide to support. And for anybody in the southwest, I would definitely recommend picking up the phone to Ellie, even if it's just for help and advice. Thanks very much.